So hi guys, welcome back to Ponderings with Mark Webb from Palm Coast. And today is Tuesday, May 27th. I hope all of you had a great Memorial weekend and we're getting back to it. Today I want to share that we're going to have a continuing conversation about code enforcement here in Palm Coast. I've brought a guest, a good friend of mine, and we're going to sit and talk about how the process works and what elements of it may need changes or not. So I look forward to having you spend some time, and remember, like and subscribe. The podcast is really doing well, and I'm hoping to bring more exciting guests of things that are going on with the podcast. So hey, welcome back to Ponderings from Palm Coast. I'm Mark Webb, and today I have a very special guest. Mark Stancel is here with me, and together we want to discuss and talk about some things that are happening in Palm Coast, and specifically I think we're going to touch on code enforcement in the city. Mark, first of all, welcome. Thank you for finally getting here. Been trying to get you here for a while, and when we're retired, didn't know we'd be this busy. Huh?
That's true.
Oh my God.
That's true.
Somebody once told me, goes, welcome to retirement. 7 Fridays and a Sunday. No days off. So, first of all, before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about you? How did you get to Palm Coast?
Well, Mark, I've been coming down to Crescent Beach over on Anastasia Island for 8 years. And I fell in love with this whole area of Florida. And so I knew my way around. And on my 50 high school reunion is when I met my wife, Donna.
Wow.
And I had been planning on moving down here as a single
You
guy.
are a lucky man, so I'll just tell you that.
I am so lucky. And I asked her, well, how do you feel about living in Florida?
And where were you then?
In Missouri.
Oh, you were in Missouri. Okay.
That's where we grew up. We went to high school
Show Me
together.
State? Is that what it is?
I hate that. Show Me State. Yeah. My son, he was born in Missouri. The other two were born in California.
Oh.
So my daughter would tease him. Oh, hey, okay, show me, boy. He hated that. But anyway, but I asked Donna, how do you feel about moving to Florida, living in Florida? And she said, well, I don't know. So I brought her down when it was hot. Last week of July, first week of August. But see, in Missouri, it's very hot in the summer.
Right.
And there's no sea breeze. And the humidity is terrible. So I brought her down and she said, oh, I like this. So we immediately purchased a house. Moved down, 8 months later.
Into Palm Coast.
Into Palm Coast,
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Yeah, so that's how we got here. But then we got here and we started going to the city council meetings, out of curiosity, because I've always been interested in politics, but I'd never been involved. So we said, we need to get involved. So the first thing I did was I got appointed by the city council to be the CAC representing Palm Coast with the River to Sea Transportation Planning Organization.
Now, was this before you went to the Citizens Academy?
Yes, this is
Wow.
early. This is early.
Wow.
So I'd meet once a month and we'd learn about the roads and how the money goes and who gets it and stuff like that. And then that wasn't enough, so I got on the code enforcement board. And that was actually fun. But I also learned a lot about
Hopefully you're going to teach us some
that
things
weren't
today.
working right.
Yeah.
So then I decided to run for city council last year, and had a very good campaign. Had a good campaign manager. Donna did a great job. My wife. So anyway, but we lost by 2 votes to Ray Stevens, who ultimately became the winner of the city council. And I supported him and helped him. I helped him get elected. Great guy. He deserves to be on the city council. But then Ray got sick.
Right.
Okay, but since I lost by 2 votes, then I was appointed to the Planning Development Land Regulation Board, PDLRB.
And that's under Ray Tyner. Right?
Ray Tyner is basically in charge of that.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty, I tried to get on that early, but I lost to David Ferguson, who I sit next to on the board now. But I had to give up my code enforcement board seat. I tried to get Donna in there, but there was a little fiasco stuff going on there. So that's another story. So
I was sitting in the room. I saw it.
So yeah. But yeah, so we just and we started another thing. We started a seniors getting together luncheon group.
Oh, tell me about that.
Over 3 years ago.
Uh-huh.
We didn't have a lot of friends. We went to one club and it was a bust. So we said we'll do it ourselves. So we started this and we got 160 people on our mailing list. We usually get at least 20 people. Sometimes we've had 30 show up for our luncheon. Some people have come and gone, but we keep getting new people, and it's just now we have so many friends.
Well, tell me about that luncheon. Where is it? When is
Okay,
it?
well,
how can people know about it?
We have our.
That's
luncheon.
what you want, more people there.
The more people. It's the second and fourth Friday of every month. We started out at IHOP, then we moved to Denny's, but Denny's closed. Now we're at Bob Evans.
Oh, nice.
At 11:30, the second and fourth Friday of every month. If anybody wants to come, welcome. But you got to be a senior, 55 and above, because we're all old. And so, but yeah, and we've got so many friends. You can contact us by seniorsgettingtogether.org. And there's a place where you can sign up, get more information, and join us.
Well, that's one of the things we try to do here at Ponderings from Palm Coast is let people know how to meet other people and discuss and learn about things.
Yeah.
But Mark, you touched on Code Enforcement Board. And I have some real heartache with that whole process. So help me. I need your help. I think I've been approached by a lot of citizens here that don't understand that process. So walk us through that a little bit.
Okay, well, here in Palm Coast, the code enforcement is a totally reactive system, okay? Which is the wrong way to approach this because we're too big a town now. We're not a little Sleepy Hollow.
Right.
We're bigger than a lot of cities. 107,000 people. We're spread out. Okay, and we've grown. It's not a vacation home anymore, although people do come and vacation here.
Right.
So, but what happens is there's a lot of code violations going on, and to go through them all, is difficult. But somebody has to be mad at you and say, I don't like that they're doing this. Like say your grass is too high and you haven't cut it. Your neighbor can call or go online and make a complaint to the code enforcement people, and they will come out and they will give you a ticket, a warning. Then sometimes they come back 15 minutes later and you haven't fixed it. They give you a second one.
These are city employees.
City employees
that work through and are paid for by the city, but they are reactionary. So it takes a citizen to put in a case for what they believe is a violation.
That's correct.
So then the city comes, gives you a notification. Then what happens?
Okay, so after a while, you get 2 or 3 of these, and then they'll say, okay, well, you have to come before the code enforcement board, and which is going to cost you a minimum of $53.50. They call it court cost. when you appear before the board.
Really?
Yes, we're like judges up there, and you plead your case.
And that's after you've had a couple of them?
Yes.
And you
Sometimes-
haven't done anything?
and
you haven't
fixed it.
Okay.
Or say sometimes you might fix it, but then they'll come back again, and you've let it go again. They'll start the process all over.
Huh.
But eventually, you got to come to the code board on the first Wednesday of every month, and we'll have 50 to 60 cases. Wow. Okay. Now, here's the thing: of these 50 to 60 cases, 90% are returns of people that have already done this. There's only a small amount of new ones because it depends on if somebody calls in a new case. Now, we had a gentleman come up and he said, yes, I'm guilty, I'm going to pay my fine, but I have a concern. 2 people on my street are doing the same thing, but nobody gave them any warnings or fines. Why is that? So
Fair.
the answer is nobody complained about it.
So if a representative of the city comes to my house because somebody called because I have a boat in my driveway, and I'm not there, so they write it up and they hang the paperwork, and my neighbor who hasn't been reported has a boat in their yard, they don't go over and ticket that neighbor?
No, they do not.
Even though they visibly see that the neighbor is violating the code.
That's correct. They are not allowed to be proactive.
But yet they're called code.
Enforcement.
So continue that thought.
Okay. So the problem is they're not really doing their job for the city. The city has all these codes. It's like an HOA in a way, because, the city is so spread out. But these codes were set up back when the city was first started.
Right.
And they have been amended, I understand, at one time, many years ago. But it needs to be reformed now because they're not doing their job. I ride my bike through like the S section or the U section because I lived there. Mm-hmm. And I could probably write down 20 or 30 violations. But nobody's calling on it. Now let me back up here. People that have to call or put in a complaint online.
On the Connect, Palm Coast Connect.
Palm Coast Connect.
Right.
Now, they have to give their name and their address.
And that's a fairly new thing.
That's
right?
new.
Right.
They cannot do it anonymously because they don't. So a lot of people won't do this because they don't want their neighbor to know that they're the ones that did it.
Well, that's understandable.
Yeah, I don't. If I call on because my neighbor's got garbage cans out in his front porch, which is a violation. They have to not be seen from the road. I don't want him to know that I complained on him.
Right.
Now,
my understanding is that rule wasn't changed here in Palm Coast. That was changed by the governor at the state level, right?
I believe so.
It was not something that the city changed. And I've done some research into that, and the decision behind it by the executive body that made that, their intent, the way I interpreted it, was they wanted to have neighbors talking with neighbors in a friendly manner. Hey, Bob, your trash cans are over there, and you know that they need to be put away. And hopefully a friendly conversation cures that, yeah, no problem, Mark, I'm going to move that. Hasn't really turned out that way, though, I believe.
No, it's not like that.
No.
And unfortunately, it's not like the old days, like when we were growing up, everybody knew everybody. A lot of times you don't even know who your neighbors are because, people are inside watching TV, they're playing video games. They don't get around to like neighborhood block parties like we used to have.
Sure.
Neighbors aren't as friendly with neighbors as as they used to be,
Well,
which is
also,
sad.
well, also, it's probably even in my neighborhood, we have rentals. We have a couple of short-term Airbnbs. So you don't really know who's
Yeah.
in there. You get a chance to respond.
Yeah.
So, okay, so
Well, you know, you,
The-
you brought up the rentals though. Now that's an issue because, okay, say you got the rental people commit a
case.
case. By the time a code enforcement officer gets there, those people are gone.
Yep. I was hearing about
You
that
know,
today
That's
in the city meeting.
that's a problem. That's a problem, and the city seems to not want to deal with that because they don't want to change code enforcement for some reason. I personally had a talk with Jason DiLorenzo, chief of staff. I brought that up to him one time at a city council meeting on the side, and he just laughed at me. He says, "No, we're not going to go proactive. That's stupid. We want things just the way they are. Just the way they are." Well, you know, because their job is easy. You know, Barbara Grossman, who's in charge, nice person.
Met her
She's
several
got,
times.
I'd love to have her job, making the money she's making, and not have to do a lot.
Right.
And now I'm not accusing her of not doing anything, but because of the way the system's set up, her job's really simple. That's easy money.
Well, I think so let's back up to your process. So they show up on the board, they come in, they then plead their case.
Plead their case.
How does that work?
Okay, the case for those that show up. A lot of people don't show up,
Right.
and I'll explain what happens when they don't show up. Okay, so they show up and they plead their case, and there's many times we've reduced their fine, you know, out of sympathy or logic, and you know, or we've actually thrown some cases out and let them go. If they come and give us a good case, we're not mean, you know. We listen to them and take care of them. Sometimes, you know, we just let it stand, you know, as to what the city recommends, which is 9/10 of the time we go with city's recommendation. But there are times when we let them off the hook.
Sounds like a HOA to me, Mark.
Well,
I've been in an
Yeah.
HOA and I've been written up and I had to go in front of the HOA board and explain, and they'll give you a warning, your grass too high. In our case, we lived out in the country and we had propane
yeah,
as a heating element or for your fireplace or whatever. And this was up in Northwest. Well, they were required to be hidden. One person would plant bushes. One person would just throw army netting over their tank and go, there you go.
that's not a bad idea.
So, what were your struggles as being on the board, and what were the issues you had? The consistency, was it consistent?
Well, so many people, like for example, I'm for allowing small business owners that have their
Work
business
truck.
on
You're talking about
their
work
work
trucks?
truck or their little van, you know,
Sure.
having their name on it, be able to park in their driveway overnight. They come home late at night, they come have dinner, they watch TV, they go to bed, they get up, have breakfast, get in their truck and leave.
Right.
This is not some little town where, you know, grandma's not going to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh, that's an eyesore because I see that truck in that driveway. She's supposed to be asleep. You know, it's ridiculous, you know. But what they have to do is they need to, 'cause everything's lumped under commercial vehicle, trailers, you know, all these different things. They need to break down the different types of commercial vehicle. That way, if they want to allow something, they can break it off from that. You know, you just can't say all commercial vehicles can stay there.
Yeah, you wouldn't want
You
a
know.
they got their lawnmowers on the back. No, that's different. Yeah.
But the little guy, the homeowner, he's trying to make a living here in Palm Coast. you know.
But so is the food truck guy.
That's a good one.
Because we were sitting together at the last meeting and saw how slippery that slope can get when I own a cleaning business and I have a 3x3 sign and I want to park my van, and then the next person owned a regular food truck van, and then the next person had a lawnmower landscaping business on a trailer that was 10 feet long that had mowers and stuff on it. And I can see how the city could struggle with where do you
draw the line?
Where do you draw the line?
And you know, the food guy had a pretty good argument.
He did.
You know, he prepares food in his house to put into the food truck to leave in the morning instead of having to drive, pick it up, come back, then go. Puts him off schedule.
Yeah,
you know, he had a great, but that's a little bit much to be in the driveway, I think.
Right.
You know,
I don't know what the answer is. I think what disturbed me the most was the inconsistency of the neighbor reporting neighbors. And I found when someone on our city council admitted that they knew their neighbor had chickens.
Yep.
And I'm not going to get into names or anything. If you're that curious, you can go watch the YouTube videos. It's public record. But they went and said, well, I'm not going to report my neighbor. I like my neighbor.
Yep.
And that's where, for me, we run into that neighbor-to-neighbor challenge and issue. And I even use the example of I'm a plumber. I'm a good plumber, and I have my truck parked out there, and I respond to my neighbor's needs, especially when you have a water leak or you have an issue or your toilet. And hey, I'm going to go see Bob next door because he's a plumber and he was there to help me. Why would I call Bob's truck?
I've had to have a plumber come out in the middle of the night before, you know, and it wouldn't be fair for him to have to get in his car, drive over to some storage facility, which might be closed. Some of them you can't get into in the middle of the night.
Sure.
And he can't get to his truck to come help you.
Right.
That's a good case.
So how do you think?
He said he's going to cover if people don't show up.
Oh,
yeah.
So what happens during the meeting when you're there, and how does somebody know they need to show up? Do you give them?
Oh no, they get a certified letter.
Okay, so they
get notified.
So they get a certified letter because they haven't responded,
right.
They haven't done anything to it, and they show up. You have a conversation with them. You try to figure out some way of working through whatever this issue is. What if I just blow you off completely?
Okay, here's what can happen. Okay, you don't show up now. Say this is your 7th or 8th notice. And we get that. We get it on our paperwork. There's an annotation how many times they've been served. You know, and 7 or 8 is very common. You know, that's one of the reasons we have 90% of them are repeat because people don't respond. So anyway, say you don't respond to coming when you're supposed to. What can happen is that fine can be transferred over to the tax office.
So it become a lien on your property.
Yes.
Oh.
It becomes a lien on your property. When you go to pay your taxes that next year, it's going to be a little higher. So that's how the city will recoup that fine.
Oh.
Now, also, you own property and you've abandoned it. While I was sitting on the code board, we actually authorized the city attorney to start process of foreclosure and to seizure of 2 properties. You know, we'll get them, we'll seize them, take possession, and we'll resell them.
Now, how many people are on the board?
There's when I was there was 7.
7
Yeah.
people, all volunteer.
Yeah, we're all volunteers.
All from the city.
All from the city.
That have been selected by the council.
By the city council.
And how long do you sit on
It's
that
a 4-year term.
4-year term.
4-year
and
term.
you meet
The first Wednesday of every month at 10 o'clock.
And that's for that.
So that's
Do
where
they
people
give-
have to show up.
And do they give you any kind of training or information or
Well-
guidelines of what that job is?
No,
No.
no. You have to learn on the job.
You have to just sit there and be amazed.
But the people that are up there were very helpful when I first started. And
Sure.
it's not hard to pick up.
Right.
You look because you've got the rules. They've got a thing where you can flip through and tells you what every category is. So it's really simple.
Right.
But what's frustrating is you're up there and you know that something should be done a different way because this isn't working. Some of these people, they 5, 6, 7, 8 times they get cited, and they just turn. They fix it, then they let it go. They fix it, they let it go. It's like they don't care.
Do you think that we have, I'll rephrase. Do you think that the codes are too extensive? Do you think that the intent of the city I'll touch on one, paint colors.
Paint colors. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
just recently, one woman that I'm aware of painted her house, either purposely or accidentally, that's still being debated, a color that was complained by someone else and found to be outside of the guidelines. And she's fighting it. And she has fought it all the way to the point where she may successfully get the paint.
An exception, yes.
Well, no, not only that, get the paint code guidelines modified or changed
Well-
or added or clarify earth tones or whatever. So you have
Well, that's
some,
yet to be determined.
they're still looking
I
at
can't
it.
necessarily speak on specifically because I know this case because I'm on the planning board.
Oh, that falls under the planning board
Yes.
as well?
Yes,
Really?
she has appeared before the planning board. I can't speak on
Interesting.
this.
So
I have to recuse myself.
So a code enforcement issue has been successfully fought. Her house is still the same color as it always is. And now it has migrated itself over to another group to help resolve whatever this issue is. Interesting.
Yeah. Now, what I will say this: the house was originally another color. Okay, we're putting an addition on. Okay, and they asked them, they got approval to paint the addition the same color as the house, but they painted the house a different color,
Right. And
which so that it did conform to the house, the addition did,
but not to the code.
but not to the code.
Right. And
Yeah.
I don't have a dog in this fight. I personally think that there are here's how I'll say it. Rules and regulations are only as strong as enforcement. Today at the city council meeting, I was bringing up the city's getting ready to possibly spend millions of dollars to lower the speed limit throughout the city from 30 to 25. The money would be to change the signs.
Well, I have an issue with the dollar amount that they're talking about because
I do too.
we went through Citizens
make our own
Academy.
signs.
We can make our own signs.
Exactly. I saw
And
that
you don't
as
have
well.
to take
Right.
to take the pole out of the ground.
No.
You can just put a new one right on it,
And I agree with you. But
and that won't cost millions of dollars.
No, but that's what they're estimating. The problem I have with it is a speed limit or a color code or having livestock are all examples of various types of rules and regulations that we agree to follow when we move here to Palm Coast.
That's right.
And in my previous podcast, I addressed my feelings on that. And as you're pointing out, and why I really want to pick your brain on this, and you've really shared a lot. The city does not proactively enforce, that I'm aware of, the codes that the city has on the books. They rely on case filed by neighbors.
That's 100% correct.
So if I bring you chicken eggs a couple times a month, you're not going to call me or report me to the city because I have a chicken coop in the backyard, correct?
That'd be correct. I like free eggs.
I do. I mean, hey, they're not cheap, right? So if you don't like me because I'm not giving you eggs, and you know the other neighbor is, or maybe you learned that I didn't vote for you, Mark. Maybe you're going to call me in, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Does that sound familiar in today's society? Does that
Yeah,
sound like what's going on
that is what's
in our
going on.
culture now? So, do you think that the city's fully capable and staffed to be proactive in a lot of these cases?
Yes, I do. Because there is at least 6 code enforcement officers that go out. They have
Okay.
areas. And shoot, they could take one day a month and just ride through their area and write down violations, turn them in. They need to. The city needs to be uniformed in their enforcement. There should not be favoritism. There should be widespread equality.
Agreed.
Okay.
Oh, I agree.
One of the things when I was walking door to door getting petitions to run for city council, the number one thing people were concerned with was overdevelopment. The second thing was the lack of code enforcement.
Yep.
That's the second most important thing they complained about.
Yep. The surveys show that.
And you know, so when I campaigned, that's what I spoke about.
Right.
And a lot of people voted for me. Some never met me, but they heard my message.
Right.
Because I'd be on next door with advertisements, what's happening in Palm Coast, doing videos, and then the places where I went and spoke. You know, so I had good response.
So, and I feel the same way, and
Yeah.
I do agree. I think that it is inappropriate to expect that neighbors are going to turn on neighbors. But
Well, it promotes that. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
no, please.
But that's what it does. It promotes people to rat out their neighbor, to not be a good citizen,
Right.
to be a what I call a hateful citizen.
Right.
You know, it makes you want to say, well, gee, I don't like that guy. What can I do to him? You know, that's a way.
Well, and I found in the times I've been in HOAs, for the most part, the HOA support mechanism is from a group of voluntary people that have chosen to go out and ride around on a bicycle or take a look at things and be the enforcement agency of it. But I also think that if we're going to go and take a look at that process, that code enforcement, we should probably look at those codes as well. Because like you pointed out something, we're not a village anymore. We're not a sleepy retirement community anymore. We're not even the villages. And I do run into a lot of people that have retired here. They're on the older side. They've left the hustle and bustle of wherever they were at, New Jersey, Missouri, wherever. They came here because they wanted to be a slow-paced, sleepy town with no real issues. That city doesn't exist anymore.
No.
We're a full-blown city. I see it all the time in the activity going on within the city hall. And with that, when I've lived in many of the city environments, they don't have a lot of these type of codes because they're not necessary, they're not supported, they're time consuming. Most people aren't gonna paint their house a magenta purple because they want to get along with their cities. I remember recently our mayor, Norris, who's a painter by trade, says he can count on his hand how many, and I loved it, revenge decisions were being made by somebody who wanted to paint their house magenta lightning bolt yellow because they were so mad at their neighbors they were going to do that. And he was able to talk them out of it and kind of stabilize it. So how do you think we fix this? What is it? What thoughts would you have?
Well, and actually suggested this to the city council. Actually, when I was doing my interview to replace Ray in District 3, set up a committee to reform the code enforcement. There's a lot of codes that need to be changed, deleted, or maybe some added. But mostly get rid of some of these old ones that don't pertain anymore, because it's a detriment to the city. They need to bring it up to speed, up to date, because it's old.
Right.
They need to streamline it for the city that we're living in now and then operate it that way.
Right.
Don't just have somebody, oh, well, I don't like that, and call up. Actively make sure that the city is equally enforced with all citizens, so everything is fair. That's my view.
And do you think that then hiring enough code enforcement officers to be proactive, to go around and find these issues when possible? You know, obviously, if you have a chicken coop in your backyard and it's below the fence and it's quiet or whatever, the chances
They're not going to find it.
they're not going to find it. But in that case, maybe they should question the code itself.
Well, they're looking at a pilot program now.
Oh no, they're actually wanting to go past the pilot
Really?
program
Yeah, I missed
and
that.
yeah, and actually just allow them to have chickens.
Oh.
Who knows how it's going to be? Lot of different fingers.
Well,
in this.
before I moved into my house, we were in a rental house, and the house next door had chickens.
Oh,
I didn't. At the time, I didn't know they weren't supposed to have them.
Right.
But you know, I since then I know, but I didn't go rat them out.
no, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the bigger issues.
You know, and as a code enforcement board official, I actually was not allowed to rat people out.
Really?
So I'll give you a case. My wife, Donna, okay? She did make a complaint, okay, officially. And you know, that, and I was still on the board, that never came to the board. We suspect that they never did anything with it because they're so inept at what I call inept at doing their job the way the code's written. You know, so, you know.
But wouldn't the 2 times I filed cases, one was the vacant lot behind me had a tree, a dead tree, fall over and hit my fence.
Oh, God.
And didn't do a lot of damage, but there were a lot of dead trees. And with the research, I discovered that there's a code in which property owners, and it's also at the state level, are required to maintain their landscaping and to remove any dead trees.
That's correct.
If it's a live tree, and who knows what the rules are today, because
Yeah.
this was a few years ago. If it was a live tree and a wind blew it down, it's just an act of God.
Well-
It needs to be fixed. But I opened both those, followed them all the way through, and they went through and got completed. So if your wife had initiated a case, there should have been a number there that you could follow it, and then when it got closed, there should have been some method of verifying who and how and why it was
Yeah.
closed, if you wanted to be that aggressive to it. But I don't, do you think
But
that?
you know, your tree, the dead tree,
Yeah.
okay, because we're not proactive. Okay, if we were doing our job and the code enforcement officer drives down the street and sees it, he should have reported, and that owner of that property would have been notified.
Right.
Okay,
And my fence wouldn't have been
and your
damaged.
fence wouldn't have been damaged.
Yeah,
Yep.
I agree, and I think that's the struggle that we have within the city in a lot of different areas, and it's part of that transition from small town, neighborly, we're just taking care of each other, in a city of well over 100,000 people with a $500 million annual budget. I mean, you're right.
Well,
It's
you know,
big.
that's another thing too. For a city this size, that budget is exclusively high.
Very high.
You know, other cities of this size have a budget half that size. But the city councils in the past have mismanaged the city so badly. You know, and one of the things I twice now have said to the city council, and it's on record, you know, they need to look at projects that are supposed to be going on. Do we need those now? Are they that important? Maybe that money could be used towards the infrastructure problems that we have instead of frivolous things. Staffing. Look at the city staff, 600, almost 700 people.
It's out of control.
It's out of control. Now, I can tell you, I've seen it, and there's people, you don't need a department head with 2 or 3 assistants. Why? Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Okay, we're trying to hire a city manager, you know, but once we have one.
But are we really? Are we really?
The point is,
trying
we
to
have
hire
a position of city manager.
That's
We also have a position of assistant city manager. Then, and all the department heads report actually directly to the city manager.
Sure.
But yet behind the city assistant, we have a chief of staff. So the city manager has 1, 2, before she gets to those, to the department heads. Why do we need 2 assistants? Because the chief of staff is really an assistant to the city manager.
No, I totally agree. And many of them are
One of them needs to go.
Well-
We could save the money.
many of them are unfilled. There's a lot of position we have at the management level that are unfilled. But getting back to the code enforcement aspect, getting a committee together, citizens committee, which is what they're trying to do with the charter right now,
Yeah.
because it's time to do a charter review, and the code enforcement is under the charter in a different area to go through. And I think that's a great idea based on all of the money and time and research and effort that the city council in our city's been put in to address what have always been, to me, clear rules. And that's really what I have found most frustrating. Whether you think a work truck is the same as a food truck, is the same as a tractor trailer, the rule is none. And the reason the rule is none is because they have found it to be very challenging to find a place to stop it, right?
Right.
So, and that's why the rule is none. But then they don't even consistently follow the none rule. And that's what I have the biggest issue with, is when someone of elected official level fully well knows there's a violation of a city rule and chooses not to react,
React to it, yeah.
then we should probably question the rule. Because if you've ever raised kids, and I don't know that you have, kids are really smart at weaseling through the rules. And so in my case, I never told them what the rules were, just the expectations, and I never told them what the punishment was. Because in their little minds, they would go, if if I don't come home in time, I'll get put in my room for a couple days and all my fun stuff's in my room, so that's okay. So they actually weigh the consequences.
Yeah.
And this is from a 5 or 6 year old. Who knows what adults do. So, Mark, anything else you want to share about code enforcement, or any passion that you have, or would you want to be on a committee like that?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, if I had the opportunity, I'd like to run code enforcement, but you know, that opportunity isn't there yet.
Well, you might not want to run it if it's changed the way we want it to be,
Well,
where it's held accountable and it has
If
staff.
I'm on a committee and I get it to, and I steer it the direction I want it to go, then I could run it in an efficient manner. I spent 20 years in the military
As I
running
did.
troops,
I've been
and
there.
I was known for logistically being very efficient. I could do this. Whether or not I really want to come out of retirement, though.
You know, and I applaud you for your efforts. So I just recently graduated from the Palm Coast Citizens Academy. Found it to be amazing. Found it to
It enlightened you about things.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly. But you had to participate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you had to ask
Ask
questions.
questions.
You had to show an interest when they were walking you through the water, the utilities, and that. Because I, for one, coming out of the Navy, know that the captain of a ship, though may tell us which direction to go, there's 100 people down below deck that are running the mechanisms and getting us there. And I saw that within the Citizens Academy at a lot of. Have you, in fact, I was just asked today about the county Citizens Academy. Have you thought about doing that?
We've thought about it, yeah. One of the things that, you know, you're right about asking questions. We asked a lot of questions. Like when we were at the water plant number 3 out on 1, they were showing us how the membrane systems work for purifying our water.
Right.
They had 2 of them, and they were operating all the time, but they weren't at max yet. So I asked them then, well, I see you got room for more. Yeah, we need another one, but they just shut down a tax increase that would have paid for it. I said, well, let me see. So I actually, when I was running because I went through it before I ran for office. And so I went back out there and I sat down with the chief out there. And I brought up the fact that my conversation at the time. And he says, yeah, we need one now, you know. And I said, well, how long does it take to put one in operation? He says, well, it's between 2 and 3 years to get it fully operational. Okay, so if we don't get the tax money to pay for it, all these houses, 19,000 houses that they're building, as they're built over the next 3 years, we say, oh, well, now we need water. So that's 3 years down. Then it's going to be 2 to 3 years more before it's available. We're 6 years behind the 8 ball. That's why we need to quit mismanaging the city money and get things done that we need.
Well, we are behind the 8 ball in most of our infrastructures.
Yep.
When you go to the utilities operations center, and it's made up of a whole bunch of trailers and stuff, and they are clearing ground to build a new one.
Yeah, it's in process.
It is,
Yeah.
and it's over off of US
Oh,
1.
US 1, yeah.
But it's clear to me that, and we're drifting way off topic, that the city, and this came up today in a city council meeting, that the city has desperately tried to keep our tax rate, our millage rates, as low to 0 or no change as possible, and yet all of the infrastructures that the city has and needs to react to water needs, storms, maintenance of equipment. I mean, we saw one of our newer fire trucks that we just spent like $500,000 on.
They're expensive.
getting maintenance over at Public Works, and it couldn't even fit in their bay to be worked on because the bay's too small. In fact, 2 of our fire stations were too small to have that truck fit in it. Now they are working, and they've got 2 new fire stations coming in, and all of that.
One good thing about the new facility, a lot of departments will be in the same place, so they can talk to each other better.
Oh, clearly.
That's a good
And
good
that's
idea.
one of the things I learned in talking with the different directors who partner together. Storm water systems with Mr. Cody, dealing with the utilities and understanding, because it was the failure of our storm water system that maxed out our utilities and our water system that caused us to get in trouble. And so that's really great.
Yep.
Mark, it's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Yep.
Code enforcement has been a subject that has been talked about a lot, and I totally agree with you. I'm being told there's actually a seat on it right now that they're looking to fill. I'm personally not.
Unfortunately, our chair, Norm, he passed away suddenly. That was disturbing. He was a hell of a nice guy,
Right.
And he was a great chair. When we had to re-elect a new chair, there was no doubt he was unanimous.
Sure.
And
Great.
that's a loss. So.
Yeah. Well, sir, thank you so much.
Okay.
I really appreciate it. You're
It's a lot of fun.
You're always welcome. Guys, pay attention to the code enforcement. Understand what's going on and be educated and know the things that are happening in your city. I say it all the time, and I will continue to say it. You have a voice. You can participate. There's places to volunteer. There's boards you can get involved with. I know you have an opinion because you're listening to me in my opinion. So thanks so much for coming by. Really very much appreciate you. Remember, subscribe and like. And we are now audio only throughout the area. If you want to listen to this podcast, it's easily found. I found it on Amazon, and you can listen to it while you're safely driving or doing other things. So with that, we'll catch up with you next time. Thanks a lot.